All right, welcome folks to the DTC Hotline. This is your direct connection to hot takes, cold truths, and real ecom advice from some of the best in the business. So call or text 866-DTC-2263 to get your burning ecom questions answered. That's 866-382-2263. Leave a voicemail, send us a text asking whatever's on your mind DTC-wise. Our operators are standing by. You see what I did there? Speaking of operators, let me introduce them to you. We've got coming in from his home in beautiful Newport Beach, California, Mr. Tony Chopp the Chopper, VP of Paid Media here at Common Thread. Tony, what's going on today, man?
Richard, I'm here for it. I got contractors in my house working on flooring and paint and stuff. So I got a whole collection of interesting problems that are not media accounts, which is fun.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, they're doing paint. So maybe the fumes could come through and kind of take you to another level of insight.
We can hope.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And we also, of course, have CTC's VP of e-commerce strategy, Mr. Luke, the Weatherman Austin, coming to us live from CTC HQ in Costa Mesa, California. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm doing great. It is a happy Monday. We have 2 kids under 2. My wife had a bridal shower and a bachelorette party, so I was solo dad Saturday night into Sunday morning. It was a lot of time with the kids, and I'm very, very happy for this Monday.
Yeah. Solo dad time's over.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now the only responsibility is to answering questions with the hottest take possible. So, all right. Well, just a couple of words about how it works. We'll get questions from listeners and questions from members of our admission membership service here at Common Thread. And then we let Tony and Luke add them, and they'll answer those questions for you. So really exciting stuff here because we have a couple actual voicemails to play for you guys from a couple of callers who called in with some interesting dilemmas here. So without further ado, let's get to the first one here. This is a question around media buying tactics, but here we go.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm a huge fan of the DTC Hotline, and I just had a quick question. I have a media buying tactics question specifically. We're a smaller brand, and we have one meta campaign that has had a really positive historical performance, but it seems like it stopped working out of nowhere over the last few days. I'm just curious, how would you respond to this? And I would really appreciate any insight you could give me here. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing your response.
All right. Let's throw it to you guys.
First, I'd like to say that was a very glowing review.
I know. A fan already after only 3
episodes. That is all we needed. But I appreciate the question. So what we like to do in having conversations around historical ad performance is first have conversations around auction dynamics and how those can impact things. And so we all know what goes into, or many of us know what goes into auction dynamics on Meta related to the expected conversion rate that Meta has against your ads, the CPMs associated with your customer, and then the click-through rate against those ads. And similar on Google, you have similar dynamics in the ad rank playing into it. But that's all to say that it could be any one of those factors or any others that are contributing to the campaign not spending through its budget anymore. And the other conversation that we like to have about historical ad performance is in the context of forecasts and models, which we do a lot of here at CTC, which is that we know that historical performance is not indicative of what the future outcome is going to look like. It's going to give us some baseline to measure against, but we're going to land at to some extent over or below that outcome. So that's the caveat of like, it could be any number of 1,000 different factors playing into it related to the auction dynamics, related to the historical performance, related to the competitive or categorical landscape, related to those things. So that aside, and sort of taking into account here that there's probably not things related to the product inventory or availability or sizes, things like that has all held consistent. The simplest answer would be your ads were working at one point in time for that audience at that point in time, and now you need to meet a different audience in a different way in this new time, which ties back to creative demand, and then diversity around your creative output is likely going to be the thing that unlocks that. Now, how long is that going to take? What is the output going to be like? There's a lot of nuances we could dive into there of how we think about that. But at one point in time, the existing ads and messaging that you had resonated with a core group of customers, and they aren't in the same way for some reason. That could be a myriad of reasons. So finding the way to resonate with the customers in that way is really the thing that needs to be looked at, because there's so many things that we can do. Like, let's look at, okay, what has changed? Has the conversion rate dropped off for the past 2 weeks versus the prior few weeks? Is it the click-through rate? Is it your CPMs have changed dramatically in some novel way? Likely not the case, but okay, is it click-through rate related, CPM related, conversion rate related? Okay, we can kind of like now go down the paths of each one of those things. But unless your product is out of stock or you're running a sale that you're not running anymore, something dramatic like that, it's likely related to meeting a customer at a specific point in time, and the constant need for creative volume, more creative diversity being the thing that's necessary to find that again.
Tony?
Yeah. Yes. So I feel sometimes the pull when we get these questions that sound like nothing is working or everything's broken, I feel the pull into more specificity. So which is kind of what Luke is talking about. When we say nothing is working, does that mean that spend stopped or slowed down dramatically, or is it efficiency? So I think one of those two things is important to understand. But one other thing that popped into mind is the nature of how dramatic the shift is can be a clue. So for example, if you went from spending, if 90% of your spend got cut like overnight, that is a signal that it's probably something policy or pixel or payment, right? And sometimes those errors, sometimes the ad operations piece of the puzzle can be a little bit difficult to sort out. Like, where is it actually coming from? Is it payment? Is it policy? Is it pixel? Those things are all P's. That's kind of nice. But my point being is that the if it's a super abrupt thing, like we were spending a couple $1,000s a day, now it's a couple $100s a day, then the problem is likely more deeper in the bones. If it's more of a gradual, to Luke's point about like, oh, we look at conversion rate and it's trailing down over a 7 or 14 or a 30-day period, or we look at CPMs and they're trending up over a 7 or 14 or 30-day period, then that's going to connect back to where all roads lead with Meta, which is we need to keep fueling the fan. So when you're thinking about troubleshooting significant changes in performance, to Luke's point, we're assuming that it's not a website issue, although one time we spotted one of these where there was a notable change in performance from an email pop-up that was showing up on all of the pages of the site and sort of changed that user experience. So think about your website, think about your checkout process, look over there, pay attention to whether the change is really, really sharp and really dramatic, or if it's a smoother curve, because that could be a clue where to go look.
Right. No, I love that. So first, payment policy pixel, 3 Ps. Let's clip that. I like that. That can be a new little nugget of chopper wisdom. But so the payment policy pixel thing, that's what you look at if it's a short-term dramatic drop is essentially
really sharp. Yeah.
And then if it's over a longer period. Now, the sense I get from this and what I've heard from other people too is like, this is a dramatic drop off over a, let's say 7 to 14 day period of time. Right. So is part of what we're saying here that like, for some reason, everybody just decided that, or the audience for this particular message just kind of vanished over that short of a period of time, or is there potentially something else going on there?
Well, so the first thing that comes to mind is like, I'm looking at the ads and I'm looking to see if spend is moving between ads. Like, so as a function of potentially CVR or some other input signal into the metric. But I think if you see degradation in performance, you're likely going to see delivery changing between various ad units in the account. And there's things that you can try to impact that. So, if you have an ad that was historically a really, really great performer, but for whatever reason, one reason or another, it's delivering less, and then other ads are delivering more in that same campaign, you can try to bring it into a new campaign and get delivery that way. But these are just band-aids. Back to Luke's point, that particular unit of creative that its ability to reach its audience has diminished. So you can ask your meta rep too for a creative fatigue report. There's some data points, some signal you can get around how meta interprets the fatigue of that creative that may be useful. But I don't know, this is going to be an annoying advice that we're going to keep saying over and over again, but I spend less time like figuring out like how to manipulate the platform and go figure out how to make some new ads.
Yep. Creative volume, creative diversity. Turns out that's the answer. All right, let's go to our next caller here.
Hey guys, love the DTC hotline. I think it's fun. Would really appreciate like any answers on this. So I have a client who's really particular about their brand standards, and it's affecting our ability to diversify our creative and kind of scale up. So how would you go around that conversation with the brand? And if they're stubborn and won't budge, how do you work within their standards? Would love kind of any oversight you have there, and keep doing what you're doing. Thanks, guys.
There you go. Another fan. What do you say, Luke?
First, I would talk to as many people as possible in terms of their perspective on what the brand standards are, how they would articulate them. My experience with this conversation is that there tends to be a lot of opinions, but there does not tend to be consistency in that number of opinions as you branch out more than one or two people. And I'll give a specific example. So there's a client of ours that comes to mind that has a very high view of their aesthetic and how they would like to be perceived and positioned as a brand in the market. We went in person to their office and spent a whole day with 4 key stakeholders talking about that very thing, about creative content, diversity, what their perspective of their brand image and their brand standard is in their minds. And each of them had different things actually to say about what that meant to them and what was important. That over time, one person's opinion and perspective will tend to create sort of a narrow rut, right? Because they'll bring that, when you even bring other key stakeholders within the same organization, they may bring different angles to it and expand that further. And something I think Taylor tweeted this out actually earlier today, where something along the lines of creative diversity is not so much like trying to force yourself or one person's brain to think more diversely about more creative formats, but it's a diversity of sourcing of the creative. It's diversity of production. So rather than, let's you and me keep thinking about ways to diversify it, it's let's go find a different production source or a different source of the creative that we're getting that's going to help to diversify in the format. So similar principle for this conversation, get the people together, get all the opinions. And I think that in itself, that conversation will actually expand the breadth of like what's possible to us, because it'll be 4 people in a room instead of 2, right? Or 6 instead of 3, whatever it is, that'll be helpful. And in that conversation, bringing examples of other brands to the table, especially brands that we on the client side or on this side, like that we all think about when we think about who we would like to be or who we aspire to be, is a helpful thing to have as a frame of reference to look at. Oh, we want to be like this luxury brand, or we want to have this sort of aesthetic. And then you actually see the diversity of creatives or the creative formats and types that each of those brands are running. That'll help expand it as well, to be like, oh, that brand is perceived in that way, but they also run really social, native, lo-fi creator content, right? Okay, cool. Maybe it's okay for us, right? And it expands that way. So bring that to that conversation, get multiple perspectives, and then ultimately performance is going to be the thing that's likely going to convince someone, especially if they're connected to the business outcome in any way. And so being able to create a situation, even if there's hesitancy, to test out different formats of creative and different content types, and may the best creative win, is ideally the scenario you get to. And that's the thing that it's assessed by.
Yeah. No, one thing that's I think is important to call out there that I think is a really interesting insight is the idea that like if there's a brand you're working with really stringent brand standards, it may be the case that it's not the brand standards, it's the point of contact at the brand standards for the brand or whatever, right? And if you actually have a conversation with more of the stakeholders on that side, you would discover that they're actually maybe not as strict as you had originally thought. And that maybe actually one person's opinion and bringing more opinions to bear would actually kind of expand the range of possibilities that you have, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the idea, everyone I think would their idea of their brand would be that it would exist outside of any one person in that way. That actually like lends itself when a brand or product or an idea inspires you to think about, to add a different point of view to the conversation, is actually a positive reflection on the brand that inspired that for you, even though it may have not been the original intent, which is challenging, right? Because things are always changing and always evolving, to be able to like hold that of like, oh wow, I think our brand and our product's actually taking on a different dimension, a new dimension. How could we cultivate that? Is that something, or is there a risk inherent to that? So there's definitely an openness that's necessary in the conversation, because we all have opinions and perspectives that are different. But I think that the best outcome is when those perspectives are combined to create the bigger picture of a thing.
Yeah. Tony?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Luke's describing. I think the meta ads library is your best friend in this endeavor, connected to Luke's point about like, let's go look at some of the brands that your client aspires to be like, and see what they're doing. I think they might be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case. We've tried to do some stuff on the media side over the years to de-risk the exploration. So, and there's, other companies out there like Tube Science that have this sort of business model where they'll, cover some of the costs of the creative production, that sort of thing, to actually, to Luke's point about like, may the most performant piece of media win. So I think you can explore some ideas around, removing some of the risk from some of the things, or trying to limit some of the risk from some of the things that are scarier. And, another thing came to mind as Luke was talking about like this idea of the ethos of the brand, that having there be some common denominator that's deeper, yet still more malleable than fonts or a particular style of photography. So I overheard Taylor this morning talking about a liquid death as an example of a brand whose marketing message ethos is really about having a sense of humor. And that plays out in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different formats, as opposed to, this really specific type of product photography. The product always has to be featured on, whatever in this particular environment or whatever else. So one of them, the latter, is like a really, really specific detail, look and feel sort of treatment. The liquid death example is more of an ethos, like what do we want this brand to feel like, that I think opens up some conversation.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a few seconds here to talk to you about Admission, our membership program here at CTC that gives you access to one-on-one consultations with our growth experts, as well as weekly live events and access to our gated library of e-commerce trainings. This is the best way to work with us here at Common Thread Collective if you're in the 6 to 7 figure range. Now, to get started, all you have to do is book a call with me to talk more about it at youradmission.co. That's youradmission.co. All right, back to the show. No, I like that. That's an important point that, I talked about with Taylor on this week's episode of the e-commerce playbook, around the idea of having the brand standard be actually thematic more so than actual, like, oh, we use this font or we use this one design asset or something along those lines. And that's totally necessary in a world where you have like a diverse set of creators making your stuff. So, okay, cool. Let's jump on to our next one.
Hey y'all. Yeah, so I just wanted to know if you've seen any success with top of funnel campaigns, like optimized for add to cart or any other leading metrics rather than conversions. Thanks.
I just want to say out of the gate, we did not get any positive feedback on this show from that question. So that was heard.
That's right.
It was just straight into the question.
All business.
Maybe depending on the answer here, we can get some.
Like a fan.
So, yeah. But Tony, I'll kick it over to you. I've started out on each one so far.
I mean, the short answer is like all of these things, every single tactic that you all can bring to me in a question, I'm going to tell you this is a tool in the toolkit, and there is no right or wrong in any of these things. It's like telling me a screwdriver is wrong. Like, it doesn't make any sense. A screwdriver is the right tool if you need to screw something in.
Yeah.
So when you think about quote unquote top of funnel campaigns or non-conversion optimized campaigns, you have to think about what is the job that you're trying to do and what is the tool that needs to be deployed. Mm-hmm. So top of funnel campaigns, whether it be awareness or traffic, or maybe what even might be considered like mid-funnel campaigns, like optimizing for an add to cart or a non-purchase event, are going to have some attributes that are quite a bit different than conversion-based campaigns. Notably, the traffic is going to be a lot cheaper. The CPCs are going to be a lot cheaper. The CPMs are typically going to be cheaper. So, and at the same time, that traffic isn't going to convert nearly as highly as a conversion-based campaign. So what I think is important is there's a really important distinction around where your brand is at in your journey. So if you are a brand new brand, if you are $0 to $5 million, you have a long way to go using conversion optimized campaigns as your primary source of traffic. Very long way. As you start to get into 10, 15, $20 million plus, what I believe is that it is prudent and smart and appropriate to be making an investment in awareness, into net new eyeballs for the brand, recognizing that those aren't going to show up as really high performing campaigns. But we found really cool ways to look at the connection between investment in awareness or mid-funnel optimization and the performance of our conversion optimized campaigns as it shows up in engaged audiences or even frequency. So no right or wrongs. It's a tool in the toolkit that has a place, especially as the brands grow.
What I would add is if you're genuinely curious about understanding what the opportunity of an upper funnel optimization tactic could look like, whether it be add card and shade checkout or up the funnel or doing an awareness media buy, expand your time horizon. Whatever you're thinking is the time horizon necessary to be able to measure the impact of this, stretch it out. And I'm trying to remember the name of the report from Meta, but they put something out. Now, I think we have to take this with a grain of salt, but like how the full effects of upper funnel or awareness media can't even be measured within a 6-month time frame, which is the maximum duration of sort of their conversion lift tests look back. So like there's even a constraint there of what we see for incrementality tests that we run. If we run an incrementality test for 30 or 45 days, we see the post-test treatment window having a meaningful impact on what that test read full impact actually is. And so as you expand higher up in the funnel, I think the idea is that you're getting in front of customers that are less ready to convert immediately. That's like tends to be the hypothesis associated with like, I want to go up the funnel so that I can get in front of folks that are higher up in their consideration journey with me. Now, that debate aside, if that's true, it's going to take longer than you think to realize the full impact of that media spend. And so expand out your time horizon and then set up measurement associated with it that's actually going to give you what you need. So run a conversion lift on Meta and run an incrementality test at the same time, or run a brand lift on Google. Like have the measurement set up in a way that's actually going to give you the signal and expand out your time horizon. Because if you're hoping to run for even 14 to 30 days an add to cart campaign and see a meaningful change or incremental impact on the business, like I think you're going to be left wanting. And the dollars would just go back to conversion media if you have them under the same time horizon in which you're assessing the results.
Right. So as part of what you're saying, that kind of like a good way to assess whether or not these quote unquote top of funnel or really awareness campaigns are worthwhile is, do you have a 6-month to 1 year time horizon to make a decision here or to assess the efficacy of the spend? And I think for a lot of brands that are below, let's say the 8-figure range or whatever, they don't have 6 months or a year. They have to be thinking in terms of these like, weeks, days, months, whereas a larger brand has maybe a little bit of the luxury, let's say, to be thinking about the efficacy of ad spend over the course of like the next year or whatever. Is that like a fair way to summarize that?
Yes. Now the specific time horizon is going to change based on because an add to cart optimized conversion campaign versus an awareness optimized meta campaign, like it's going to have different impact in different time horizon. But the specifics aside of the time length against it, expand out the time horizon, and then run a thoughtful measurement alongside this test in the form of at least a conversion lift test within the platform, if not an incrementality test layered on via a third-party tool as well.
Yeah. Tony, I want to go back to your metaphor about tools in the toolkit. So let's say that an awareness campaign of some kind is the screwdriver. What situation is the screw? When is that a tool that makes sense?
Well, I can tell you where we see it in our brands is, measuring, like looking at new traffic that's coming to the site, like percent of new traffic that visits the site. We can get a really high percent of new eyeballs for a brand by using upper funnel media. And I think I had another analogy. Oh, I know what it was. So back to the toolkit, right? So I got my toolbox here. Mm-hmm. The way that I think about this game is not like which one of these tools in this toolkit is the right tool. It's that I want to have more tools, and I want to know how to use more tools. So what do I mean by that? Well, don't spend 90% of your media budget on awareness media. That's bad. That's never going to work in any case. But rather commit to 5, maybe 10% of your budget over the course of a year into this tool. And to Luke's point about the measurement, dial in the measurement. If you have a $10 million a year media budget, pencil out $500,000, $600,000 and figure out, all right, we're going to deploy this. We're going to deploy it with measurement. I like incrementality. I like conversion lift on the platform. I even like qualitative data like post-purchase surveys, like customer reported, how did you hear about us stuff, to sort of triangulate in on whether or not how this media is impacting the mix. I think the caution that I want to add here is this. I think this is the thing. It's not whether or not this works. It's understanding how it's playing into this bigger recipe.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. Luke, anything else on that?
No, Tony said this earlier, but like there's just likely other areas I would go before doing an ad cart optimization on Meta. If I'm looking for ways to expand, like I would figure out how to make YouTube work. We're seeing really strong results with YouTube across a large set of our clients. I might go see how many Snapchat free ad credits I could go and get, because they're giving those away this time of year in a way that makes that more appealing. Yeah, so I think there's just a few other areas, and then notwithstanding Google, just the core campaigns in Google and the opportunity that exists there. But that lends to Tony's earlier point of like how far can you take your current channels in terms of the contribution for the business, instead of looking at these other areas first. But that's the only point I would make regarding looking for incremental opportunity in these other tactics versus expanding meaningfully into a net new channel, in a different way.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. You fellas got time for one more?
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it. Here we go.
Hey guys, big fan of the new podcast and format. My question, I know you guys have talked a bit about how difficult scaling an eCom brand is right now, but if you could start an eCom brand, is there any product or niche that you would choose or also avoid? Thanks.
There are a lot. There are many I would avoid. There'd have to be meaningful LTV increase on the product, like not 100% increase in a year, like 200% increase in a year, or opportunity to get really meaningful, 80 percentile outcome or better in terms of LTV increase. I also would be most interested if there's influencer leverage or involvement in the brand. If it's creator oriented brand, someone that is a natural creator that has a following that can create a meaningful organic demand through their following, would be the other thing that makes it interesting as well, in addition to the LTV associated with the product. And then I think those would be on the top 2 on my list. There's without getting into too many more specifics around like where it sits. But if there's meaningful LTV, and then there's distribution opportunity within a creator or influencer that has organic distribution and impact, and it can also feed the content engine of the brand, I think that's a really interesting 1-2 as a foundation.
Mm. I like that. Okay, so TikTok influencer comes to you and is like, "Hey, I got a supplements brand," or something along those lines.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I got a supplements brand, and where it's 18% landed costs, and we're doing 10 million a year already. Mm-hmm. Then
as a smart influencer.
Yeah.
Knows their landed costs. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, the supplements one is one that always pops up, right? Because when it's sort of wired up correctly, it's just it's wild how it works between the super low cost of delivery and the LTV math. It's incredible. I think the supplement space has a unique set of challenges that are specific to the supplement space. Number one, depending on what you're selling, the ad platforms get real touchy about their policy stuff, and you might very well have an uphill battle on it. Or at some point in time, I'll tell you this: if you're going to do a supplement business, at some point in time, the front end of your business on the ads running is going to fall out from underneath you. And you're going to have to fight some policy battle that you didn't expect. And it's going to be real scary. So that's like the challenge with that. And it's a hard question to answer because I've seen businesses in all categories work really well, and they're product driven and they have a brand story and it works. And I've seen businesses in all categories that sort of lack the ethos, that it's just an uphill slog. So I'm sort of a bit less married to the category and more to the product itself. And to Luke's point about if your products are causing customers to become loyal and come back and buy, you definitely have the ethos of what it takes. Otherwise, if that's not true, you can sort of juice the thing with paid media for as long as possible, but it's never going to get off the hamster wheel if you don't have products that people appreciate. Just one other little quick caveat, because I've seen this in a couple spaces. Like, so we spend a bunch of time in, supplements and apparel and beauty and things like that. Over the years, I've seen a couple of sort of non-traditional e-commerce advertisers like auto parts absolutely crush it, because it's a little bit of arbitrage in the sense that Facebook isn't like the hugest thing that people think about when they're just running an auto parts thing. Or so I think, like, if I was going to do it, I would be interested in finding some sort of category that I feel like I could arbitrage into the media space with what I know, as opposed to just like going to war in supplements. So the last thing about supplements, everybody knows the game. It's a game of inches. All your competitors are running at most break-even CAC, and most likely some sort of first-order loss because of the LTV mechanics. So, yeah, if you do the supplements, but it's a knife fight.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing that you ended with there, Tony. With the other, like, on the other side, there's high AOV brands, high AOV, very little to no repeat purchase that are selling auto parts and high average order value plants, and that like live in this whole other category of very low competition, much more niche, and little to no LTV. That's fascinating. And many of these businesses that you can just build, like where we think about building on Meta as the core demand engine, these are built on Google and Google Shopping and owning these core keywords where there's a lot of search intent and demand driven around these categories, and much less competition. That's a totally different game, and also a fascinating one that we've enjoyed being a part of. So yeah. I think pick one side. LTV, low AOV, high AOV, niche, no LTV. Those are both fascinating games.
All right, there you go. Love it. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. So thank you to both of you, of course, and thank you to our intrepid callers for calling in. If you guys listening out there want your questions answered on this pod, you know who to call. Leave us a voicemail, 866-DTC-2263, or send us a text at that same number, and we might read your question or play it on a subsequent episode. We want to hear from you. these two guys want to answer your questions and solve your problems. So please call in. All right. For Luke, the Weatherman Austin, and Tony, the Chopper Chopp, I'm Richard, the Professor Gaffin. Appreciate y'all listening, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.